Hi, 8 differences between university back in Africa and university in Italy. Number one, you are required to do an entry exam if you want to get into a bachelor's program, which is quite different from back home because we sit for a national exam. For example, in Uganda, it is called the Uganda Advanced Certificate of Education, or the certificate high school leavers like a certificate, or you do the international baccalaureate if you go to an international school, and then you use that. They assess that in order to give you a place in a university. But in Italy, even after your high school exams, you are required to do an entry exam for which you compete for places in a university, which goes to my second different point. In Italy, in public universities, there is a limited number of students that are accepted in every study program every single year. It is very different from back home, because back home, if you can afford to pay the tuition fees, the university is going to accept you. But in Italy, they could say, let's say this year we are sponsoring 20 doctors, of which 5 have to be international students, and that is it for that university. You can't really go in no matter whether you have the grades or not. There is a cutoff point, and that is what they base on the entry exam. That is what they base on to take to sponsor or to allow candidates for that study program for that particular year. The government also sets a budget to sponsor students that particular year, which takes us to the next difference, which is different from Africa, and that is going to take us to the next difference, which is the amount of tuition. Now, you all don't pay the same amount of tuition in Italy. Tuition is based on your income level for the year, your annual income level for the family, your family income basically. So some people can pay nothing if they're very poor, and then some people can pay a few €100, and then usually maximum for a public university is like €2,000 for the very wealthy. So it is progressive. It depends on how much money your family has, and it depends on something called the KUD, which shows the annual income of your entire family, which is completely different from Africa, especially Uganda, where I come from. Universities set a certain tuition fee, and that is uniform for everybody. Everybody is supposed to pay that, except if you have a scholarship. I must also say that in general, in European countries, the tuition fees is cheaper than it is in African universities. It's so expensive to study in Africa at university. The other difference is that once you study in Italy and you choose to, let's say, do a semester abroad at your university, and let's say the European Union or the government the host university that you would like to study to pays you to study abroad, or to do a semester abroad, or to do a year abroad, which I find very interesting. And in Africa, mainly in Uganda, where I come from, nobody really pays you to go and do a semester abroad. If you want to do that, it is maybe an organization or kind of arrangement by the university where they choose certain students to go and do an exchange program for a few weeks, not even a whole semester or a full year. And I don't know if it is paid, but I've never seen that. That is really different. The other thing that really surprised me, that I really liked, is that you can choose to either be an attending or non-attending student. By non-attending, that means that you are studying or you're following the courses online. Now, usually they have a platform. At the university where I studied, it was called Blackboard, where there was all the materials that was to be studied the whole year. The professor was allowed to, upload it, and then you would go and read the material, and then you could either choose to just depend on that and then the books that are written to actually sit for the exams, or actually to go to the classroom and participate in the debates and participate in the discussions that happen, and also to hear what the professor has to comment on these different topics, which I find very interesting, because in Uganda and in Africa, I know that lecturers actually come and give a real lecture, and there are not very many possibilities for you to say, no, I'll stay at home, unless if the program is actually studying online, and that's it. The other difference that I found very amusing and also very considerate is the fact that you don't have to accept a bad grade. Like, if you score, the grades used to be out of 30. If you score, let's say, a 28 and you don't like it and you'd like to score like a 30, you could say, sorry, I don't accept this grade, to your professor, and then you will be given 5 more other chances to actually come and do the exam, which brings us to the next difference. But before I get there, I just want to compare that with African universities, where for most study programs, you have only one chance to sit for the exam, and if you don't pass it, that means you have to retake and do it another time. So you don't have the chance to either say, yes, I accept the grade or not. It's either you've passed and then you move on, or you have failed and then you have to do it again. You don't have to say whether you've passed, because the pass was, I think, an 18. Yes, it was an 18 out of 30, but my friends that got 28 and wanted to get 30 said no. So this difference really surprised me and I really liked it. It's just that it is time consuming in my opinion. In Italy, you have up to 6 chances. They're called appellos to pass an exam. So if you go to an exam and you get a grade that you don't like, you think is not high enough, you can say no, you reject the grade, and then you have another chance to sit for that. However, you don't sit for exams whenever you want. You can only sit for exams during exam periods. Now, exam periods are usually between June and July, and then November and December, or sometimes December and January. So you cannot sit for exams any other time apart from that time. So you look at the schedule, the course schedule, and see when that exam will be, airing again, or they will be, sitting the exam again, and then you go and present yourself, or you register actually for the exam and you go and sit for it. Very interesting. Back home, so like I mentioned before, in Africa, especially in Uganda, there is a pass mark, let's say 50%. So if you score above 50%, you have passed. You don't have to repeat the exam. You only have to repeat if you have failed. There's really not much chance to say no, I don't accept this grade, or yes, I accept the grade. If you get 90% or 100%, okay, that's good. If you get 50%, you all have passed and that's it. The other difference, which I really didn't like, it really stressed me, was having oral exams. And I know that for bachelor's degrees, most of the exams are oral exams. So you go and get tested orally, like you sit in front of a professor and they interrogate you, kind of like you answer. They would ask you about, let's say, what is your opinion on so-and-so's theory of A, B, C, D, and D. And then you get to, answer and interact and all of that. Some of the questions are like, they required cram work, but that means that you must have read the books, which brings me to another point. You study a lot from books written by those professors that are teaching you. So the professors write the books. They could be like photocopying, printing, duplicating place nearby, where they will sell you duplicates at a cheaper price, but usually the prices are quite pricey. I mean, the books are quite pricey. So that is why they say that even though tuition is nearly free, the education is not actually free, because you have to pay for those books, especially at bachelor's level. It's different at master's. So I found those kinds of exams very challenging because, first of all, I wasn't used to them. Number two is that you can't really lie to somebody who wrote the book. So once you get it wrong, you will see it in their face that you are telling lies, basically. Because they wrote the book, they know what you're talking about. And of course, I remember there's this professor in transnational commercial law. He asked a question and I honestly didn't know. It was about European trade, I think law or something like that, a convention that I wasn't very sure about. And I told him I'm not very sure about it. And he's like, but this is the question. I'm like, can you ask me another question? Like, for instance, this and this I'm really conversant with. He's like, no, sorry, you don't tell me the questions. I give you the question. I'm like, okay, sir, I'm going to try. Anyway, I gave a wrong answer and he looked at me and he's like, madam, can you come back next time? And what really got me the pressure is the fact that you get the results there and then, and they don't actually put you in an office in some settings. We basically were like 50 students waiting to sit for the same exam, and one professor, and was being very loud, like, okay, Miss Ndiwabene, this is the question. What do you think? What is your opinion? And what is your defense? And like, everybody's listening. Can we go somewhere private where I can feel a little bit more comfortable and confident to remember the things that I have learned or I have read? Honestly, everything just vanished from my head because I was like, what the hell? If I say something wrong, everybody's listening. And also he shouts out the grade and then, shakes your hand. It was just, I was not used to it and I did not like it. That is one thing that I hated about studying in Italy, having to do oral exams. But I had only, I think, 2 oral exams and the rest were written, which were, more comfortable for me and a better way to express myself. Last but not least is that at all levels you write a thesis and then you get to defend it or to present it in front of a board of professors in that department. Now, tell me why it is very intimidating if you've not done it or if you're not used to that. In my undergraduate, I did that in Egypt, which is in Africa. We did not have to write a thesis. Number one, you do not know how to do that critical analysis and all of that, and how to write, and to, argue out things on, already written literature. That is already a challenge. The other challenge is standing and then defending that thesis. Oh my goodness, in front of your family. Also, your family is invited because that is an exam, and also that is the day that you graduate. So it is, I think, out of 12 credit points, and it was just too much pressure. First of all, to write and then to have to present. It was a great experience. However, it was very uncomfortable, in my opinion. In Africa, on the other hand, I wrote only written exams. I didn't do any oral exams. If there was anything oral, it was group work that was presented in front of everybody as a kind of like debate or presentation. I did not have to do any exams orally and actually be marked or assessed on the dot, in the moment, and then given my grade. That was a bit different, actually very different. So going back to the thesis, your professor knows already, because you do it with a professor that supports you and guides you. They already know that you have already passed, and they let you know of the possible mark depending on how well you're going to defend it anyway. So my professor told me you already have a 6, and the grade was out of 12. So she told me if you do great and answer all the questions from the other professors, you will score 6, so you have all the 12 points. And here I am. I went with, so everything was okay. The fact that my family was there, it was very emotional, and of course I didn't want to embarrass them by getting a bad grade, because then they read your final grade, like your 2 years grade or your entire academic journey grade, in front of everybody, in front of the professors. So nobody asked me any questions, so I thought everything was cool, but I didn't get all the 12 points. I got 10 points, which is still a pass, because anyways I had passed everything else. I think that's it. In Africa, not really. Not everybody does that. Not everybody does a thesis, especially at bachelor's. Maybe at master's, but at bachelor's, no. I'm very sure that some universities actually do not, but some do. Let me know in the comment section if anything resonates or if anything is different. Comment down below how things are, especially the part where you have to accept or reject the grades, because in Uganda that nonsense is not allowed. I forgot to say that for your thesis, you have got to print out and publish a book. I don't know where those books go, by the way, because I have mine, but then you have to give a copy to your professor. She told me, I think, that it goes to the library, but I'm just wondering if the university has been in existence for 100 years and they graduate tens of thousands of students. How many books do they have? Where do those books go? Does somebody know where all those books go? Comment down below if you've had a similar experience in university, or if you've had something different, and please let us know how we can relate with that, if it's in Africa, if it's in Europe, which city, and in what country.